The mountain man lived in a place far from the world of towns and people. His home was high in the mountains where the air was cold, and the wind moved through the trees like a whisper. He had chosen this life many years ago, to be alone and to forget the troubles that had followed him from the life he had left behind. His cabin was small but strong, made of thick logs and a roof of heavy shingles. It stood on a hill that looked over a valley, where a river wound its way through the trees. In the mornings the man would wake before the sun and step outside to breathe the crisp air. His body moved easily over the rocks and paths that he knew so well. The world of the mountains was his home, and he knew every tree and every animal trail his. Days were long and filled with work, but each task brought him peace. He chopped wood to keep the fire going through the long winters. He hunted for food and gathered herbs and plants that grew wild around him. He repaired his cabin and made tools from the materials the forest gave him. He knew how to live from the land and had no need for towns or stores. His mind was quiet, and his heart felt safe in the rhythm of his days. Yet even in the beauty and calm of the mountains, there was a quiet sadness that lived with him. He remembered the life he had left behind and the people he had known. He remembered love that had been lost and mistakes that could never be undone. He had friends once, but they were gone now. He had loved someone once, but that love had faded and left only memories. He did not speak of these things to anyone, because there was no one to speak to. The mountain was his companion, and it listened in its own way. The wind through the pines seemed to carry voices from the past, and the river hummed a song he knew well. In the evenings he would sit by the fire and let his thoughts wander through the years that had passed. He thought of the young man he had been and the choices he had made. The regrets came sometimes, but they were quiet now and did not disturb his peace. Too much food was simple and work was hard, but life in the mountains gave him a kind of freedom he could not have had in the towns. He fished in the river and set traps for small game he kept a garden where he grew what he could. In the short summer months he built furniture from wood and made his own clothes from animal hides. His life was one of constant effort, but each day brought a sense of accomplishment that city life could never give him. He had learned to watch the weather and to understand the animals. He could tell when a storm was coming and when the deer would move through the valley despite his solitude. He was not lonely in the way people often thought of it. He had the forest and the mountains and the small creatures that shared the land with him. The birds sang in the morning, and the foxes moved silently at night. He sometimes talked to himself or to the wind as he worked, but it was a comforting sound too. His ears, it reminded him that he was alive and connected to the world around him. Even the silence of the mountains was full of life. If one listened closely, the mountain man had a routine that he followed every day, but he also knew how to enjoy the small surprises that life offered. He would sometimes find a rare flower growing in a hidden place, or a patch of berries that were perfect for picking. He would watch the sunrise from the top of a ridge and let the colors fill him with a quiet joy. He liked to imagine stories about the clouds and the shapes they formed in the sky. He had a deep respect for nature and understood that he was only a part of something much larger. The winter, the snow covered the land in a thick white blanket. The cold was harsh, but he was prepared. He had built a store of food and firewood, moved with skill over the icy paths, and knew how to track animals even when the land was hidden beneath snow. He enjoyed the challenge that winter brought, and the way it forced him to focus on survival. He knew that life could be hard, but he felt strong and capable in the face of it sometimes. He thought about leaving the mountains and going back to the towns, but he knew he could never stay there. He had seen too much and learned too much. He had made promises to himself that he would live differently, and that he would never again depend on anyone else to survive. He liked the freedom of making his own choices, even if it meant living alone. He had a small fire in his heart that kept him warm, even on the coldest nights. One evening, as the sun was setting, he stood on the porch of his cabin and looked out over the valley. The colors of the sky were soft and peaceful, the river sparkled, and the mountains were dark shapes against the fading light. He took a deep breath and felt a sense of belonging. He belonged here and nowhere else. The world beyond the mountains could wait. He had built a life that was strong and quiet and full of the things he loved. He thought about the past sometimes, but he did not let it control him. He had learned from it and had grown stronger because of it. The mistakes and the losses were part of him, but they were not all of him. he had learned to trust. His own strength and his own skills, and he had found a kind of peace that few people ever knew. He had chosen this life, and it had chosen him. Back night came, and the stars filled the sky. He could hear the owls in the distance and the rustle of small animals in the forest. He built a fire and sat beside it, feeling the warmth on his face. Let his mind wander over the mountains and valleys he had explored. He thought of the paths he had walked and the rivers he had crossed. He felt connected to the land and to the life he had built. Heaven. In the quiet moments he felt alive. He was not lonely in the way people imagined. He had a companion in the wind and the river and the trees. He had a rhythm to his life that was comforting and strong. He knew the mountains would take care of him as long as he respected them. He had learned patience and observation and had grown wise in ways that only a life in solitude could teach. Days passed like this with a steady rhythm. The mountain man would wake early and work through the morning. He would rest in the afternoon and watch the sun move across the sky. He would prepare food and tend to his small garden. He would spend evenings by the fire, letting his thoughts drift. He felt the seasons change in his bones, and the land around him shifted with the years. He felt a quiet satisfaction in his life, and a sense that he had found a place where he could belong. Though he had lived alone for many years, he knew that life could bring surprises. The mountains were full of secrets and small wonders, and he never knew what each day would hold. He respected that, and embraced it as part of the life he had chosen. He was strong and capable and had learned to face each challenge with calm and skill. He trusted himself and the land and the quiet wisdom that came from living close to nature. Mountain Man was content in a way that many people never knew. He had faced the hardships of life and had found a way to be free. He had left behind the past and had built a home for himself in the mountains. He had work and routine and beauty all around him. He had solitude but not emptiness. He had learned to listen to the world and to find peace in its rhythms. He had learned to be patient and to watch and to understand. In this quiet life, he found strength and meaning. He had chosen the mountains for their silence and their challenge and their beauty. He had chosen to live by his own rules and had found a deep satisfaction in the simplicity and honesty of it. He was a mountain man, and he had built a life that was full and strong and quiet and alive. One cold morning, the mountain man noticed something unusual. Near his cabin, smoke rose in a thin line above the trees, and it did not come from his own fire. He felt a sudden tension in his chest. He had not expected anyone to come to this place, not in years. He moved quietly through the snow and climbed a small ridge to see who was there. Below in the clearing stood a woman. She looked tired and careful. She carried a small bundle, and her eyes scanned the forest as if she feared it might hold dangers. He watched her silently from the trees, not sure what to do. He had lived in the mountains for a long time and was used to being alone, but now there was someone at his doorstep. The woman had come a long way. She had traveled through forests and over hills. She had faced cold nights and long days on foot. She was polite in the way she held herself. She did not speak at first, but carefully approached the cabin. When she reached the door, she paused and looked up at the small home. Her hands were steady, but there was a hint of worry in her expression. The mountain man felt his heart beat faster. He had not expected company, and he did not know how to respond. He stepped out slowly, and the woman looked at him. She nodded slightly and spoke in a quiet voice. She said she had come from a place far away and that someone had sent her here. He frowned and asked why she hesitated, and explained that it was complicated, that there were promises made long ago. He listened carefully. He had thought that part of his life was gone, and that nothing from it could reach him here, but now it was here, and standing in front of him, he studied her face, trying to read her thoughts. She seemed honest but cautious, and he did not know if he could trust her immediately. They spoke in short sentences. At first the mountain man asked questions, and she answered. Carefully, she told him she had traveled because someone had told her he might help her, and that she needed a place to stay. Her voice was calm and measured. She did not try to force a connection, but she also did not hide the truth. He noticed the quiet strength in her and the careful way she moved. Her presence made him uneasy, but it also sparked something in him that he had not felt in years. She stayed near the cabin and helped with small tasks. He watched her work and noticed her attention to detail. She gathered firewood and carried it without complaint. She cleaned the area around the cabin and made small improvements she did not intrude on. his space, but she also did not leave. He realized that she would be staying for some time. She had a reason for coming, and he could sense it even if she did not speak it aloud. The days passed, he began to learn more about her. She spoke of her journey and the difficulties she had faced. She had traveled through harsh weather and dangerous paths. She had found strength in herself that reminded him of his own survival skills. He began to respect her courage and her ability to endure hardships. He also felt a strange connection to her, as if her arrival was stirring memories he had long buried. He found himself talking to her more. He asked about her life, and she shared pieces of her story carefully. She had experienced loss and challenge, but she had kept moving forward. She had learned to rely on her own strength as he had. He felt a sense of familiarity in her resilience. It reminded him of the people he had known in the past and the choices he had made she did not seek to replace anyone from his life, but her presence reminded him that the past was not as far away as he had thought. One evening, they sat by the fire together. The mountain man had gathered wood, and she had prepared a simple meal. They did not speak much at first, but the silence was comfortable, not awkward. He watched her face as she ate. She had a calm demeanor, but her eyes held a question, as if she were searching for something. She did not demand answers from him, and he did not offer them freely, he realized. That trust would have to grow slowly between them. Over the next weeks, the mountain man observed her carefully. She had habits that were careful and precise. She knew how to manage herself, and she adapted quickly to life in the mountains. She could climb over rocks and through snow with ease. She understood the challenges of living in such a place, and she faced them without complaint. He found himself impressed by her ability to endure and to adapt. She was not just surviving, she was learning. And finding her place near him, they began to share more of their daily routines. He taught her how to set traps and how to fish in the river. She showed him small tricks she had learned on her journey. He realized that her knowledge was useful and that she was a partner in a way he had not expected. They worked together to prepare food and maintain the cabin. Her presence changed the rhythm of his days, and he felt a mixture of unease and curiosity. He had never thought someone could arrive and alter the quiet life he had built. The mountain man sometimes thought about the reasons she had come. He knew she was sent by someone from his past, but he did not fully understand the connection. She spoke of promises and debts and journeys that he had long ago left behind. He felt a twinge of guilt and confusion. The past he had tried to escape was here in the form of this woman. He did not know if he should resent her or welcome her. He felt torn and uncertain. He began to notice small things about her that made him think she had a quiet strength and a steady presence that made the cabin feel less lonely. She did not rush him or demand attention, but she also did not disappear. She respected the land and the work that he had done. He began to see that she could live here and that she could share in the life he had built. She was not an intruder, but a companion in an unfamiliar ways. Winter deepened. They faced harsher weather together. The snow grew thick and the wind cut through the trees. The mountain man noticed how she moved through the snow with care and skill. She carried wood and water and helped him with his tasks. He realized that her presence made the work easier and that together they could face challenges. Alone would have been harder. Her calm demeanor and steady hands made the dangers of the mountain feel less threatening. They began to speak more freely about the journey that brought her there. She told him of the people who had sent her and the promises they had made. He listened and felt the weight of history pressing on him. He had thought he was free from the past, but now he understood that some things could not be left behind. The woman had arrived to remind him that life was full of unexpected turns and that he could not ignore what had been left unresolved. Despite the tension between past and present, they began to share small moments of connection. He noticed the way she smiled quietly when something amused her. She asked questions about the land and listened carefully to his answers. He realized that she was learning not just about survival, but about him. Her curiosity was gentle and respectful, and he found himself opening in small ways he had not in years. He felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. They began to prepare for the long winter nights together. The mountain man taught her how to manage the fire and prepare food that could last. She learned quickly and soon took on responsibilities that eased his burden, he began to see that her presence was not just a reminder of the past, but a help in the present. She brought life into the cabin that had been silent for many years he did not yet know. If he could trust her completely, but he could not deny the comfort she brought, he sometimes remembered the life he had left behind and felt a pang of regret. He had thought he could escape the past, but now it was clear that it had followed him here. He looked at the woman and realized that she was a link to the history he had tried to forget. She was patient and careful, and had arrived with a purpose. He did not yet understand all of it, but he knew that she was here for a reason, and that reason involved him even in the quiet moments. He felt her presence beside him as he worked. She did not speak constantly, but her movements were close to his own. Her attention to detail reminded him of the skills he had honed over the years. He began to appreciate the companionship in the simplest of acts: carrying water, tending the fire, gathering wood. He felt a subtle warmth in having someone nearby who understood the challenges of the mountain. Notice that she seemed to respect the space and the land as he did. She did not wander beyond the boundaries he had set, and she did not challenge his routines. She adapted to his way of life without complaint and without disruption. Her patience and careful observation impressed him. He realized that he was beginning to rely on her presence, not just for help, but for a sense of balance in his life. Mountain Man began to see her not just as a traveler or a messenger, but as a person who could live in this place. He had never imagined anyone else sharing his life, and yet he felt the beginnings of a trust that had been absent for years. He did not yet know how far it would grow, but he was aware of a shift in his world and in the quiet rhythm he had maintained for so long. As the days turned into weeks, he observed her learning and adapting. She discovered ways to make the cabin warmer and more efficient. She began to anticipate tasks and offered help before being asked. He noticed her careful movements and thoughtful planning. He realized that she was not just surviving. She was becoming part of the mountain life in her own way. He felt a sense of respect and a quiet admiration that he had not expected. One evening, they both looked out at the valley blanketed in snow. The river was partly frozen, and the trees were heavy with white. The woman stood quietly beside him, and he felt a strange connection to her presence. She did not speak, but he sensed that she understood the beauty, the challenge of the mountains. She had come from a world far away, and yet she had found her way into this place. He realized that her journey was not just physical, but emotional, and that it had brought her to him for reasons he was only beginning to understand. The Mountain Man knew that life in the mountains would never be quite the same. He had lived alone for many years, and had thought he would continue that way. He had built a life of solitude and routine, and had found peace in it. Yet now he felt a quiet excitement and a careful caution. He did not know what the future held, but he understood that the woman had arrived to change his world in ways he could not yet predict. He felt a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty, and a strange hope that he had not felt in a long time. As the days passed, the mountain man and the woman began to understand each other more. The woman spoke carefully about why she had come. She explained that she had been promised to him by someone from his past. He listened quietly. He had thought that life he had left behind was far away and could not reach him yet. Here it was brought back in the form of this woman. She told him stories of her journey through forests and mountains, of the people who had guided her, and of the hardships she faced. She did not exaggerate or complain. She spoke simply and honestly. He found himself drawn to her words and the calm strength in her voice. The Mountain Man remembered the past. As she spoke, memories he had tried to forget came back. He remembered promises he had made and mistakes he had taken for granted. He felt guilt and confusion. He had believed he could leave that life behind and live in solitude. He had believed he could forget the people and the events that had shaped him. Now he saw that the past had a way of reaching forward, even when he thought it was gone. They spent time together preparing the cabin for winter. He taught her how to chop wood and set traps. She learned quickly and began to anticipate his needs. She did not wait for instructions, but moved with confidence and care. He noticed how her eyes took in the land and how she remembered details. He realized that she was learning not just the skills, but the rhythm of the mountains and the way he lived. She became a companion in the work and the quiet moments that filled their days. Sometimes they would sit together and speak of simpler things: the sky, the snow, the river, the animals. They did not need to speak of the past all the time, but it hovered in the background. He began to ask questions, and she answered with honesty. She told him of the letters she had received, the directions she had followed, and the people who had sent her. She had not come to control him or demand anything, but to fulfill a promise that involved both of them. The mountain man began to reflect on his own choices. He had left people behind to find solitude he had built. A life without ties and without expectation, yet now he realized that solitude did not protect him from the past, that connections could reach even into the deepest mountains. He saw the woman as a bridge between what he had left and what he had. Now she reminded him that life was not so simple that one could leave behind everything. He began to think about responsibility and trust and the ways the past shaped the present. Winter deepened. They faced the challenges together, snowstorms, blocked paths, and the cold became sharper. They worked side by side to gather firewood and food. She learned to read the signs of the forest and to watch for tracks. He noticed her patience and her careful approach to each task. She did not rush or force herself. She moved with awareness and care. Her presence made the work easier and even enjoyable in a way he had not experienced in years. Mountain Man began to open up in small ways. He spoke of mistakes and regrets and of the life he had left behind. He did not reveal everything, but he shared pieces that he had not told anyone in a long time. She listened without judgment. She offered advice carefully when he asked or when it seemed natural. She respected the life he had built. In the choices he had made, she did not seek to change him, but to understand him. He began to feel that she was not only connected to the past, but also connected to him in the present. They discovered a rhythm to their days together. They rose early and worked through the cold mornings. They prepared meals together and checked the traps in the garden. They shared small conversations as they moved through the tasks. Each action became part of a pattern that brought them closer yet left space for thought and reflection. The mountain man began to feel a sense of comfort in her presence. She was steady, reliable, and calm in a way that balanced his own intensity and solitude. One day she spoke of the people who had sent her. She described them without anger or fear. She explained that she had no intention of bringing trouble, only that promises had been made and she had to follow through. He listened carefully. He understood that her journey was more than just physical. It was a moral, an emotional journey. She carried the weight of expectation and responsibility and had faced it with courage. He felt a mixture of admiration and a quiet concern for her. Walbangas. They spent long evenings by the fire. They shared more stories. She spoke of small joys and fears. She told of nights spent under stars and the wonder of quiet moments in nature. He found himself reflecting on his own life. In response, her stories reminded him of forgotten joys and the beauty of small discoveries. She did not impose her presence, but illuminated the spaces around them with quiet insight. The mountain man began to notice subtle changes in himself. He felt a sense of connection that he had not known for many years. He realized that the solitude he cherished could also be enriched by companionship. He did not yet understand how far it would go, or what it meant for the life he had built. He felt cautious but also hopeful. He saw that trust and understanding could grow slowly, and that patience was part of building anything lasting. They faced challenges together. She learned to predict weather patterns and to navigate the forests with care. He noticed how she anticipated the needs of their survival. She moved with skill and awareness that impressed him. He realized that she was not only resilient, but also intelligent and resourceful. Her presence reminded him of the strength people could bring to one another. He felt a mixture of relief and admiration for her courage and adaptability. Past continued to linger in the background. The mountain man could not forget the promises and mistakes he had left behind. Sometimes felt guilt and uncertainty. He struggled with the question of what was owed and how to reconcile the past with the life he had built. The woman was a reminder of these unresolved issues. She did not push or demand, but her presence brought clarity and reflection. He realized that facing these memories was necessary for his own growth. They began to share small gestures of care. He noticed the way she made the fire carefully and prepared food thoughtfully. She watched for signs of illness or fatigue. He felt a subtle warmth in these acts and began to respond in kind. He shared his knowledge and skills, and she accepted guidance willingly. Their connection deepened without words. She became part of the daily life of the cabin and the mountains. He began to see her not just as a visitor, but as a participant in the rhythm of his life. One morning, the mountain man awoke to find the woman already outside. She was checking the traps and gathering water. She smiled quietly at him. He realized that she had made the cabin her own without overstepping. She had learned the routines and respected his space while also contributing meaningfully. He felt a sense of relief and gratitude for her presence and the way she had adapted to life in the mountains. As they shared meals and tasks, the mountain man reflected on his past. He thought of the people he had left behind and the choices he had made. He realized that life was never as simple as leaving or hiding. He saw that connection and responsibility could not be entirely escaped, and that trust could grow in unexpected ways. The woman had come to fulfill a promise and had also become a part of the present. He began to consider the possibility that his life could change in ways he had not imagined. He noticed small details that made him appreciate her more. She was patient when mistakes were made and careful when the work was hard. She had learned to read his expressions and anticipate needs without being intrusive. He realized that her presence had become stabilizing and comforting. Her quiet strength reminded him that survival was not only physical, but also emotional, and that companionship could be a source of resilience even in moments of silence. They shared understanding. She worked quietly while he did the same. She did not seek to dominate or command, but moved in harmony with the life they had built. She observed the land and the tasks with care. He felt a sense of partnership and trust that he had not known in years. He realized that the mountains and the cabin could be shared without losing the solitude he valued, but instead enriching it with connection. The mountain man began to dream cautiously of the future. He did not yet know what it would hold, but he saw that the woman was a part of it. He considered the challenges of the past and the uncertainties of the present. He realized that change was inevitable, and that adaptation and trust could lead to a life fuller than he had imagined. He felt a mixture of apprehension and anticipation, knowing that the journey of understanding each other was only beginning. As winter continued, they faced storms and long nights together. The mountain man observed her strength and resourcefulness. She remained calm and effective even when conditions were harsh. He realized that her presence made the difficult times bearable and even meaningful. Their shared experiences built a foundation of trust and respect. He understood that the journey was not just about survival, but about learning to coexist and support each other in a place that demanded skill and patience. They began to share small insights and reflections on life. She spoke of resilience and hope, and he listened attentively. He shared lessons he had learned in solitude and survival. She received them with thoughtfulness and respect. He began to see her as a companion who could navigate challenges and understand the rhythms of the mountains. He felt a quiet reassurance in knowing that she was adaptable and steady. The mountain man reflected on the significance of her arrival. He had thought that his past could be left behind, but now he understood that it could reach him in unexpected ways. The woman was a messenger of history and a participant in the present. She reminded him that life was layered with responsibility and connection. He felt a mixture of reflection and curiosity about what lay ahead, and how their lives would intertwine as the days continued. The mountain man realized that he could no longer ignore the past. The woman had arrived to remind him that old choices and old promises could not be buried forever. He began to think of the people who had sent her and of the events that had shaped his life. He knew he had to face them and understand the reasons behind her journey. They spoke quietly about what had happened and what had been left unresolved. He listened to her carefully and began to consider his own role in the past. He realized that responsibility and honesty were necessary if he wanted to move forward together. They began to prepare for the difficulties that lay ahead. The woman shared her knowledge of the people who had sent her and the ways to navigate potential conflicts. He studied the land and planned how to respond if trouble came. They worked as a team, combining their knowledge and skills. She moved with awareness, and he noticed how quickly she adapted to the needs of survival. They cleared paths and gathered supplies and reinforced the cabin for harsh conditions they faced. The challenges as partners, learning to trust each other more with every task. He began to share more of his own story with her. The memories of past mistakes and broken promises weighed heavily on him, but he felt that he could no longer hide them. She listened patiently without judgment and offered quiet guidance when needed. He began to feel a relief that he had not expected in revealing pieces of the past. He felt lighter and more connected to the present. The cabin in the mountains became not only a place of survival, but a place of reflection and growth. They faced external challenges as well. The winter was harsh, and storms blocked paths and brought heavy snow. They moved together through the snow, gathering firewood and water. She learned the signs of the forest and the ways to anticipate difficulties. He noticed how she stayed calm and efficient. Even when conditions were dangerous, her presence made the challenges manageable and the work less lonely. He realized that her companionship was a source of strength that he had not known he needed over time. He began to trust her in ways he had not trusted anyone in years. He shared responsibilities more openly and relied on her judgment in practical matters. She contributed ideas and strategies that improved their life in the mountains. He noticed how her patience and foresight balanced his own impulsiveness and experience. He began to understand that trust was not given all at once, but earned through consistent action and respect. As they shared long days and evenings by the fire, they spoke of hopes and uncertainties. They reflected on the lessons learned from past choices and considered what they wanted for the future. They were cautious in their words and careful in their expressions, but a bond grew between them that was quiet and resilient. He felt a sense of comfort in her presence and a curiosity about the life they could build together. She did not force connection, but offered understanding and shared responsibility. Faced moments of tension and uncertainty, the mountain man sometimes feared that involving her in the past would bring danger. She sometimes worried that she might have misjudged the mountain man or the challenges ahead, yet they continued to work together, sharing tasks and strategies. She reassured him with calm reasoning and careful preparation. They learned to anticipate each other's responses and relied on one another for both practical and emotional support. Their relationship grew stronger through these shared experiences. He began to notice small but meaningful gestures. She learned to maintain the cabin efficiently. She prepared meals carefully and helped with tasks that required attention to detail. She watched for signs of changes in the weather and suggested adjustments. He observed her actions and recognized her intelligence and adaptability. He realized that her presence had become integral to the life they shared. She was no longer a visitor, but a partner in a life that demanded skill, patience, and awareness. Mountain Man reflected on the meaning of her arrival. She had come from the past, but her influence extended to the present and the future. He began to consider what it meant to live with someone who understood the mountains and respected the solitude he valued. She had brought insight and companionship. He felt a mix of apprehension and hope. She was a reminder that life was unpredictable and that he could not control all outcomes, yet he could respond with skill and judgment. They practiced cooperation in daily routines and survival skills. He taught her the ways of the mountains. She shared insights from her own journey. They anticipated needs and completed tasks efficiently. Together, they moved through the forest and the hills, gathering food and preparing for storms. They learned each other's strengths and weaknesses and adjusted to complement one another. She proved capable and thoughtful, and he felt a deep respect for her ability to adapt and endure. Over time, they began to share the emotional weight of their pasts. He revealed regrets and mistakes. He considered how to face those he had left behind. She offered understanding and guidance without pressuring him. He realized that facing the past required courage and honesty, and that sharing burdens could lighten them. He began to feel a sense of closure for some aspects of his life and a readiness to confront what remained unresolved. Even in moments of quiet, they felt connected. She moved with awareness and patience. He observed her closely and appreciated the care she put into every action. She respected the land and the routines they had established and did not attempt to dominate. He began to recognize the subtle ways she contributed to their survival and comfort. He felt a sense of partnership that was both practical and emotional. She had become an essential part of his life in the mountains. They faced external threats with preparation and calm reasoning. They've planned for storms and potential conflicts. He relied on her knowledge and instincts. She anticipated difficulties and offered solutions. They reinforced the cabin and stored supplies efficiently. They learned to communicate with subtle signals and shared understanding. They became a team in both survival and decision-making. Their combined strength and awareness made the harsh winter and challenging environment more manageable. As winter progressed, he noticed changes in himself. He felt more open and capable of connection. He had always valued solitude, yet he began to understand that companionship could enhance resilience. He observed her learning and adapting and felt pride in her growth. She respected him in the life he had built, and he began to respect her not only for her courage but for her intelligence and insight. He realized that trust and understanding could grow steadily and form a bond stronger than either could achieve alone. They began to plan together for the coming seasons. He considered the tasks that needed attention, and she offered input on preparation. He realized that collaboration made the work more efficient and less burdensome. They discussed strategies for survival and improvement of the cabin. She suggested small changes that improved life, and he implemented them together with her guidance. He felt a sense of shared purpose and growing connection. The mountain man reflected on how the past had reached him through the woman. Her presence reminded him that life could not be entirely escaped or controlled. He understood that reconciliation and acknowledgement were necessary. For peace, he began to consider what it meant to forgive himself and move forward with intention. She helped him see that responsibility could be shared and that connection did not diminish his independence. In the quiet moments they shared by the fire, he felt a sense of companionship that he had not known in many years. They spoke of practical matters and the rhythms of the mountains, but also of hopes and uncertainties. They shared insights and learned to anticipate each other's needs. He felt a deepening appreciation for her presence and for the balance she brought into his life. She became more than a visitor or messenger. She was a partner in life and survival, and a companion for facing both past and future challenges. They faced the long winter as a team. He realized that trust and cooperation were the foundation of their growing bond. She understood the land and respected his routines. They complemented each other in skill and awareness and learned to anticipate and support one another. Their lives became intertwined through shared effort and mutual respect. He began to imagine a future where they continued together and built a life enriched by connection and shared experience. The mountain man had once thought that solitude could shield him from the past. He now understood that the past could reach him in unexpected ways. She was a reminder that life was not entirely controllable, and that facing history with courage and honesty was necessary. He realized that companionship could coexist with independence, and that trust and understanding could form a foundation for a new chapter in his life. The woman had come from the past, but had become an essential part of his present and future. The mountain man and the woman had grown into a quiet rhythm together. Their days were filled with work and preparation and moments of reflection. They had faced the challenges of winter and the remnants of the past. They had shared tasks and insights and learned to trust one another fully. The cabin was no longer just a place of survival, but a home that carried both history and hope. The mountains surrounded them with silence and beauty, and they moved through them as a team that had learned to rely on and understand each other. The mountain man reflected on how much had changed since the woman had arrived. He had once believed that solitude could protect him from the past, but he now understood that life could not be controlled so completely. The past could arrive in unexpected ways and teach lessons he had not anticipated. He saw that facing history honestly and sharing the burdens with someone trustworthy could bring relief and clarity. He had grown stronger not only in skill and endurance but in his heart and mind. The woman moved through the cabin in the mountains with confidence. She had learned the routines and respected the land and the life he had built. She shared knowledge and offered guidance, and they had discovered ways to combine their strengths. The mountain man noticed her careful attention to detail and the quiet wisdom in her decisions. She had adapted fully to the environment and to him, and he realized that she was no longer just a visitor, but a vital part of their shared life. They spent long days preparing for spring and the coming seasons. They repaired the cabin and ensured supplies were sufficient. They tended to the small garden and watched the animals around them. Their shared work brought satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment. Each task strengthened their bond and reminded them of the importance of trust and cooperation. They had learned to anticipate each other and to respond in ways that supported both survival and emotional. Wellbank Mountain Man reflected on the emotional changes within himself. He had been cautious and wary when the woman arrived, yet he now felt a sense of partnership and connection that he had not experienced in years. It had given him strength, but that companionship had brought balance and perspective. He had begun to see a future that included someone who understood and respected him in the life he had built. They shared stories of their pasts in quiet moments. She spoke of the journey that had brought her and the people she had encountered. He listened carefully and shared pieces of his own history. They did not need to recount every detail, but they acknowledged the influence of past events on their present choices. This sharing created understanding and trust, and reminded them both that the past could inform life without controlling it. The mountain man began to see how much the woman had changed the cabin and the routines they had introduced. Small improvements that made life easier and safer. They had adapted their schedules to meet the demands of the mountains and to anticipate challenges. They had become a team in the truest sense, each relying on the other for skilled judgment and insight. The sense of isolation was softened by the knowledge that they faced life together and could depend on each other. One afternoon they stood together on the ridge overlooking the valley. The snow had begun to melt and the river ran clear and strong. The mountain man felt a sense of calm and clarity. He looked at the woman beside him and realized that she had brought life and perspective into his solitude. He understood that the mountains could continue to be a place of quiet and work, but that connection and trust had enriched the space and given it new meaning. They spoke of the future and what it might hold for them. Both understood that challenges would continue, yet they felt prepared and resilient. They had faced storms and cold and uncertainty and had emerged stronger for it. They had learned that life could be unpredictable and that facing it together made it manageable. Their shared experiences had formed a foundation of trust and understanding that neither could ignore. The mountain man reflected on the lessons of the past months. He had learned that solitude and independence were important, yet that trust and companionship brought depth and balance. He realized that the woman had helped him confront unresolved aspects of his past and had shown him the value of shared responsibility. He felt a quiet gratitude for her presence and for the changes she had brought to his life. They continued to move through their daily routines with efficiency, and Carrie noticed her ability to adapt and her quiet intelligence. She anticipated needs and worked alongside him in ways that were thoughtful and complementary. Their connection had grown without force and without urgency. It was a partnership based on respect, understanding, and shared experiences. The snow melted and spring approached. They began to plan for the planting season. They considered what crops would thrive and how to protect the cabin from seasonal challenges. They discussed strategies and shared tasks, and each decision reflected their growing cooperation and trust. He realized that their life together was becoming fully integrated, that the mountain could be both a place of work and a place of shared purpose. Mountain Man felt a quiet joy in observing how they complemented each other. Their strengths and weaknesses balanced one another. Their skills combined to create a more effective and resilient approach to the demands of survival. The presence of the woman had transformed not only the practical aspects of life in the mountains, but the emotional landscape as well. They had built a sense of safety and comfort that neither had experienced alone. They spent evenings by the fire reflecting on what had been achieved and what lay ahead. The mountain man spoke of the quiet satisfaction of seeing tasks completed and the value of shared effort. The woman responded with observations of her own and offered suggestions for improvement and refinement. They found a rhythm in communication and decision-making that strengthened both trust and understanding. Their shared life became richer and more nuanced. With each passing day, he considered how the arrival of the woman had altered his view of the world. He had thought he could live untouched by past events and without reliance on another. He now understood that connection and trust could be sources of strength and resilience. I'd learned to face past mistakes and unresolved promises, and to build a future informed but not constrained by them. The mountains remained a place of challenge and beauty, yet they had been transformed by companionship. The mountain man and the woman continued to build a life together that balanced solitude and connection, they shared responsibilities and decisions and faced challenges with cooperation and awareness. They learned to rely on each other and to support one another in practical and emotional ways. Their partnership had become a source of resilience and comfort and had enriched both their lives. He reflected on the unexpected nature of life and the ways it could bring change. The arrival of the woman had been unanticipated, yet had resulted in a profound transformation. In his life, he had faced the past and engaged with it fully. He had learned to trust and rely on another without losing the independence he valued. The mountains remained central to their lives, yet they were now a shared space filled with work, connection, and quiet joy. The mountain man looked forward to the days ahead, knowing that challenges would continue, yet feeling prepared and confident. They had learned to move together through practical and emotional landscapes and had built a foundation of trust and partnership. They faced the world with a balance of independence and connection and had discovered that companionship could enrich life without diminishing the strength they had each developed alone. In the quiet of the mountains, he realized that life was unpredictable and that past events could not be ignored, yet could be integrated into a meaningful present. He had discovered that facing challenges together and sharing responsibility could create resilience and growth. He had found a companion who understood the mountains and respected the life he had built, and in doing so, had created a future of possibility and shared purpose. The mountain man and the woman stood side by side, ready to meet the seasons in the life that lay ahead. They had built trust and understanding and had faced storms and solitude and the remnants of past promises. They had created a life that was strong and flexible and filled with the quiet satisfaction of shared achievement. In the mountains surrounded them with beauty and challenge, yet they faced it together, confident and connected and ready for the journey of life that continued to unfold.